Well, let's speak now to Mohammed el-Halabi, who's the former head of World Vision in Gaza. In 2016, he was arrested by Israeli forces and was accused of supporting Hamas. Earlier this month, Mohammed was released and returned to Gaza, joins us from there now, released on February the 1st. So, Mohammed, you were one of the first group of prisoners released to northern Gaza. First of all, if you would, tell me about the circumstances of your arrest.
Yeah, I was released on the 1st of February after I spent more than 8 years and a half. And you know that my case was a high-profile case, and I was convicted with no evidence. They tried to compromise me all the time. I refused all the plea bargains and compromises. They wanted me just to help them to convict the international organization assistance in Gaza, because they wanted to undermine the international assistance which flew to Gaza. I refused all the plea bargains. The number of sentences that I experienced is 174 sentences, which is the longest in the history, not only in Israel or in Palestine. It is the longest in the history.
Okay, so
they wanted me to make something.
You had 174 court cases. So the Israelis offered you a deal. They wanted you to kind of renege against your own people. Is that right?
Yes. They wanted the deal. They wanted me just to say that some international organization, including World Vision, this is the first plea bargain, that they are supporting Hamas. I refused that. I told them, if you will provide me with one single evidence, it's okay. But I challenge them if they can provide me with any single evidence that we diverted any single dollar to Hamas or any illegal groups or terroristic groups, as they call. I refused all plea bargains. The second plea bargain for me is to make a conviction, to help them to convict for international organization, which is Oxfam, Save the Children, Catholic Relief Services, and CHF. And they told me that my testimony will be confidential, it will be secret, but they will use it against this organization to undermine their work in Gaza and to stop them. And the aim of this plea bargain was not only to stop the international assistance to Gaza, but also to silence any voice which criticizes Israel, which is talking against, or to talk, which any voice is talking about the human rights violation which is committed by Israelis. Mm-hmm. So I refused all plea bargains. If I accepted these plea bargains, I would have been home 7 years ago. But I told them from the beginning that I will not help them to support any lie. These are lies. The international organization in Gaza, they are supporting the people and poor people.
So Mohammed, so you stayed.
Any illegal party.
I understand. So you stayed, and then what was it like in prison? What were the conditions like? How did you suffer any kind of torture? Just tell us about the experience.
Yeah, the conditions, there are many stages for me in the prison. The first phase, which was during interrogation period, I was physically and psychologically tortured. I suffered from 40% deafening in my first year. And psychologically, they threatened me that they will kill my children by targeting my family and my house during any war. And they will say they have a list of justification for the war. As they said to me, they will say there are weapons beside my home, or there were missiles beside my home. This is one of the things that they threatened me to do. And also, since the starting of the war, this war in Gaza, in the 7th of October, everything has changed. We were subjected to starvation and torture on a daily basis. The starvation, the only meal that we used to receive in the day, it's not adequate for a child, and it's low quantity and low quality. So my weight was, in the beginning of the war, was 95 kilos, and my weight was, when I was released, in the day when I was released, it was 55. So I lost 40 kilos during
Indeed. Well, I think we can show a picture of you as you were before you were arrested, looking visibly a great deal healthier than you were when you left prison. And you'll forgive me for saying now, you look a lot thinner at this moment in time. Did you receive any kind of help with your health?
Yeah, for me, there is another point that, in addition to the starvation, we have been subjected to daily torture. So they broke my chest ribs, and not only me, hundreds of prisoners, they suffer from the same thing, and they did not treat us. We asked for treatment long time they did not treat us. They told us we will treat you after the end of the war. And this is the only thing. But after I was released, I was held by one of the hospitals here. We make a medical, I make a medical investigation, and I'm taking now some medicines and some medicines for the blood and for improving the vitamins and minerals of blood. And also I have some painkiller for the chest.
When you came back to Gaza at the beginning of this month, obviously a very, very different place to the one that you left behind, because Gaza was still intact when you left in 2016. What was your reaction when you first saw your old home?
And if it was breaking my heart when I was on my way back to home to see this massive destruction and the houses and the infrastructure. You know, during the last war, because I was detained in 2016, I used to work in my humanitarian work during the war 2014, 2011, 2007. So we used to say in the previous wars that there are some houses totally destroyed or partially destroyed. But now we cannot talk about any partially destroyed, because more than 90% of the houses here are totally destroyed. There is a massive destruction here. When I was my way here to this interview, I saw the tons of solid waste which are accumulating in the streets. I saw the sewerage system which is destroyed, and the wastewater is flowing in the streets, which I expect that it will make epidemics and diseases for the people here. In addition, that all the people they are living under their rubbles, and there is a high risk of the people that there will be a collapse in these rubbles, and more people will be killed. In addition, the corpses which are already under the rubbles.
What is your reaction after everything that you've been through when you hear the US President Donald Trump saying what he wants to do with Gaza to clear it out?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I was just asking what you thought about what Donald Trump said about what should happen to Gaza, that all the Palestinians should be forced to leave it.
You know, my reaction after I knew that I would be released?
No. What you thought of what the US President, Donald Trump, said about Gaza, saying that all Palestinians should be forced to leave.
I'm sorry, because I don't hear you well.
All right, I'll tell you what, we'll leave it there for now. But Mohammed, we do appreciate you speaking to us. Mohammed el-Halabi, a former head of World Vision in Gaza, arrested in 2016 but released earlier this month. Thank you for your time, sir. Thank you. Now, the ceasefire agreed between Israel and Hamas is expected to include the release of all Israeli captives in 3 phases. The first phase, which started on January the 19th, is still underway. 33 Israeli captives held in Gaza are expected to be exchanged for nearly 2,000 Palestinians detained in Israeli prisons. So far, Palestinian factions have released 19 Israeli captives, while Israel has freed 1,135 Palestinians. 2 more exchanges are expected to take place during this phase. One on February the 22nd, when 3 Israeli captives are expected to be freed. The other 11 are set to be handed over on March the 1st. Some are presumed to be dead. The second phase of the agreement is due to begin on March the 1st. In this stage, the remaining 59 Israeli captives are due to be exchanged for more Palestinian prisoners. At least 35 of the Israelis have been confirmed dead. And as part of this phase, Israeli forces have agreed to fully withdraw from Gaza, and a permanent ceasefire is to be established. Hamas and Israel are expected to hold indirect negotiations on the implementation of this phase early next week. Let's speak now to Ori Goldberg, who's an Israeli political commentator joining us from Tel Aviv. So, Ori, first up, just tell us about the sense in Israel about what's been happening today and what the expectations are now.
Well, of course, there's a lot of happiness that's focused on the families and the captives returning. In the sense of expectations, there's certainly an understanding, I think, among the majority of Israelis that Prime Minister Netanyahu will try to obstruct the deal. But I think there's a growing understanding that this deal, with all of its phases, including phase 2, is moving on not because of Israel's influence, and that Israel has very little power to affect the trajectory of this deal. So Netanyahu is seen as an obstructionist, but not as much more. I think in that sense, there's certainly a lot of approval for the deal. Most Israelis want the deal to go through. There's still a lot of confusion about what the deal means with regard to the continuation of the war, even though, again, it's my impression that most Israelis understand that the war has ended and that Israel will have to decide how it wants to play a part in the future of Gaza.
What is the sense within Israel about what Donald Trump was saying about what should happen with Gaza and the forced removal of Palestinians who live there?
Well, I'm sad to say that the initial response to Donald Trump's statement was, of course, an overwhelming endorsement in a lot of ways. This is the collective fantasy shared by the great majority of Jewish Israelis, from settlers to self-styled liberals, that something will happen and the Palestinians will simply not be here. But I think it became very apparent very quickly that this was not really a plan. In many senses, this was akin to the plans Israelis had heard about during the progression of Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza. So I think now there is little concern with Trump's plan, even though, of course, there was that endorsement which normalized it and legitimized talk that had been effectively repressed by mainstream Israeli discourse. But again, there's a lot of focus on the hostage deal that seems to be the only measure of success still left for Israel after such an abysmal failure in all of its self-declared goals for the war in Gaza. So people are focusing on the deal. People are narrowing the scope of their vision and their foresight to the most immediate. They go as far as next week. News of negotiations beginning on phase 2, I think, seem to most people like an understanding or proof of the fact that this deal is going to go through, regardless of how high Israeli tensions are or how profound Israeli anger is. People are, to put it in one word, resigned.
As we look ahead to the remaining phases of the deal, where do you see the weak points? What should we look out for in terms of areas of fragility?
I think a lot will be riding on the identity of the senior Palestinian leaders who are imprisoned, who will be freed during phase 2. I think that there's a lot there because that has something very clear to say about the future leadership of the Palestinians, the future united leadership of the Palestinians, if you will. I also think that there is always a chance that the obstructionists in Netanyahu's government, the people who are committed to a potential ethnic cleansing or transfer of populations, the people who want a settlement in Gaza will do whatever they can to instigate not just obstruction, but an interference with the deal, an attempt to completely scuttle the deal. If that happens and Netanyahu is convinced to carry out one last wave of strategic bombings over Gaza, that might result in a stampede towards the Egyptian border or towards the Israeli border, and there's no knowing where events might go from there. That's always the problem when you've got a set of events that's on the verge of the abyss. But I think, and this is not said often enough, I think it is in Netanyahu's best interests, to see this deal through. Netanyahu is not a natural ally of the settlers who want to expand Israel into Gaza. Netanyahu is not much of an ideologue. Netanyahu is a politician, completely concerned with his career and his personal future. And I think he understands that it would provide him with an opportunity to win an election that's sure to be called in Israel over the next year. Because if he can be the prime minister who fought the necessary war, but also made the sacrifices and suffered the public outrage over the necessary, quote unquote, peace deal, he stands a good chance of winning that election.
Okay. Ori, thanks for that. Appreciate your perspective. That's Ori Goldberg, an Israeli political commentator, who joined us there from Tel Aviv.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.